My stepbrother is the villain in this novel I dreamed about, cold, aloof, and utterly ruthless. To keep him too busy to be evil, I started acting like a total creep and harassing him with texts every day. Babe, you look so good working out without a shirt on. Wanna kiss you so bad. Babe, you're so sexy when you're all sweaty. I want your sweat to drip all over me. Babe, you're so cute when you're staring at your phone, trying to figure out how to catch me. It just makes me want you even more. My brother was deeply disturbed. He'd lecture me every day, telling me I couldn't act like this. Then, the hero and heroine of the story got their happy ending, and my job was done. I packed my bags and made a run for it in the middle of the night. But before I even got on the plane, I was kidnapped. When I opened my eyes, he was there, calmly tying my wrists with his tie. If you like your big brother so much, he purred, why were you leaving? Babe, you've been a bad boy, drinking a glass of wine from someone else's hand. This was the third time I'd sent my brother a text in my new creepy stalker persona. The first few times, he'd left me on read, completely ignoring me. Just when I thought this attempt was another failure, he replied, his tone as serious as ever. Don't send me these kinds of messages again. I don't like it. Perfect. I needed him to not like it. If he did, my whole plan would fall apart. So, in the face of his annoyance, I texted back, I don't care if you like me, babe. All that matters is that I like you. Seeing that I wasn't backing down, Edward decided to just stop replying. My fingers tapped on the screen, ready to add more fuel to the fire. But just as I was typing, I heard a noise at the front door. I quickly deleted my message history and rushed over, dutifully taking his suit jacket as he came in. Bro, you're home early from your work dinner. Edward pinched the bridge of his nose, looking tired. Yeah, he mumbled. I saw the dark circles under his eyes and secretly rejoiced. It looked like I was genuinely getting to him. He wasn't even sleeping well. I almost burst out laughing right there. Edward's gaze swept over me, and he frowned slightly. What's so funny? I wiped the smile off my face and moved closer, giving him a supportive shoulder rub. You're home early. It makes me happy. Edward shot me a suspicious look. Before he could ask what kind of trouble I was stirring up now, I casually tested the waters. Bro, you don't look so good lately. Have you been really tired? Edward, who had been enjoying the massage, tensed up as if he'd remembered something unpleasant. The more he tried to avoid the topic, the more I pressed. Seeing his face get darker and darker, I feigned concern. Bro, did something happen? Edward shot up from his seat. He tossed a curt no over his shoulder and hurried upstairs. Staring at his retreating back, like he was fleeing for his life, I let a small smile curve my lips. Looks like I'm really grossing him out. Edward and I have a blended family. After my mom married his dad, he never really warmed up to me. He found me too wild and unconventional, complaining that the air got noisy whenever I was around. And I didn't like how uptight he was, a total stick in the mud even though he was young. So, we mostly stayed out of each other's way, only putting on a show of civility for our parents. That all changed when his dad went abroad for a business deal, got caught in some civil unrest, and was killed. My mom couldn't handle the shock. She fell into a deep depression and passed away just a few days later. From that day on, Edward never called me annoying again. No matter what happened, he would just pat my head and tell me not to be afraid. And I stopped deliberately causing trouble just to see him lose his cool. Our relationship improved by leaps and bounds. But that same year, I got incredibly sick. I was so out of it I felt like I was constantly seeing my great-grandma's ghost. I was plagued by one bizarre dream after another. In my dreams, Edward was the villain of some novel, a cold but ruthless man. When he was bored, he'd tamper with the hero's brakes. When he wasn't, he'd hire paparazzi to take misleading photos to stir up drama between the hero and heroine. Even on the day the main couple finally got together, he couldn't leave them alone. He crashed the wedding and staged a fake kidnapping of the heroine, all to make the hero prove his love by giving up his entire fortune. The result? He fell victim to the classic villain trope of monologuing too much and met a gruesome end. They never even found his whole body. And me, the villain's sister, was even more of a throwaway character than he was. My death was just one of the things that pushed him over the edge and turned him evil. So, right then and there, I swore to my great-grandma's ghost that I would change our fate. The first thing I did when I woke up was force Edward to swear he'd be a good person. But I quickly realized that wasn't going to work. I couldn't bet my life on the hope that a fictional villain would keep a promise. After brainstorming like crazy, I finally came up with a new plan. I had to stop Edward from ever meeting the hero and heroine. I would cut off his path to villainy at the source. From that day on, I was a constant presence, whispering all the gossip about the hero into Edward's ear. I'd do it while he was peeling an apple for me, while he was cooking, and I'd even crouch outside the bathroom door and read it aloud while he showered or used the toilet. My reasoning was that Edward had incredibly high moral standards, for himself and especially for others. All I had to do was constantly drill into his head what a bad person the hero was. Then, when it came time to choose business partners, he would subconsciously avoid the guy. No interaction, no drama. Problem solved. But it didn't take long for me to realize this plan had a fatal flaw. One day, as Edward was cracking walnuts for me, I habitually pulled up the latest dirt on the hero to read to him. Usually, he just listened without comment. But this time, his hand paused, and he turned to look at me. "You seem very interested in him." I was in the middle of a juicy sentence and just hummed in agreement without thinking. It wasn't until I heard him crack a walnut with way too much force that I belatedly shook my head. Edward didn't buy it. "You've read me like 100 articles about him. And yesterday, you said he was good looking." I thought about it. He was right. After reading so much gossip, the person who was getting tired of the hero wasn't Edward. It was me. The last few times, I'd read with a bit of an attitude. One time I couldn't help but mutter that he was so handsome, it was a shame he was such a scumbag. And apparently, Edward had only heard the first part of that sentence. Worried he might actually become interested in the hero, I quickly tried to clarify. "He is good looking, but I'm not interested." Before I could finish, Edward cut me off. "You're interested in him? You like him?" A giant question mark appeared over my head. I was constantly reading him the hero's rap sheet. How on earth did Edward arrive at the ridiculous conclusion that I liked the guy? When I didn't immediately deny it, Edward's lips tightened. It took him a long moment to speak. "It's normal to have a crush at your age. But based on the recent news, his character seems questionable. So until I've checked him out, you are not to have any contact with him." He spoke so fast it was like he was afraid I'd interrupt. And to make sure I couldn't defend the hero, he grabbed his jacket and walked out the door as soon as he finished. That evening, a binder as thick as a book was delivered to me. Back when I first found out my brother was a villain, I'd hired someone to dig up dirt on the hero so I could know my enemy. I knew his life story by heart. But the file Edward gave me was completely different. In the version I'd read, the hero was a model citizen from a young age, with a flawless record. But in this new file, most of his life was glossed over, except for every bad thing he'd ever done and every person he'd ever dated, all of which were detailed extensively. It included pulling the legs off an ant when he was 6 and writing a love letter to a girl in his class when he was 15. It even included the full text of the letter. I couldn't figure out what Edward was up to, but I sensed danger. Because the file also contained information on all the hero's ex-girlfriends, including the heroine. According to the plot, the heroine held a fatal attraction for the villain. Realizing this, I stayed up all night, coming up with 100 new ways to keep Edward from meeting her. From telling him their tragic love story under the guise of "I have a friend," to putting his profile on dating apps so he'd be too busy with calls from potential dates to bother with the main couple. None of it worked. The date of Edward's first fated encounter with the heroine was fast approaching. I was so anxious I couldn't sleep. Just as I was considering drugging Edward with sleeping pills to make him sleep through to the end of the story, I was scrolling my feed and a video popped up. In the novel, a total creep was harassing the female lead every second. The constant stress made her exhausted and unable to focus at work. While I strongly condemned that kind of behavior, I could totally use it on Edward. If I could distract him, he wouldn't have time to mess with the hero and heroine. I had no experience, so I spent 3 full days studying how to talk like an obsessive creep. The moment I felt I had a handle on it, I bought a burner phone and sent Edward an anonymous text. Babe. My babe. I'm so obsessed with you. I assumed that when Edward got the message, he'd at least be curious about who sent it. Or maybe he'd be angry and determined to track them down. But 2 hours passed with complete silence. Not even a reply. I bit my lip in disappointment. Did he not get it? Or was my performance so unconvincing that he just brushed it off? To figure out his reaction, I went downstairs and, using some random excuse, borrowed Edward's phone. He was sitting on the sofa, reading a file. He handed me the phone without even looking up. I was worried he might check my recent apps, so I opened his social media first and randomly voted in some poll for a celebrity who was trending. The vote successful pop-up appeared. I snuck a glance at Edward. Seeing his attention was elsewhere, I quickly switched to his texts to investigate. My message was right at the top, and it was marked as read. This didn't make sense. If he saw it, why was he acting so calm? Before I could figure it out, Edward seemed to remember something and held out his hand. Give me the phone back. I jumped, quickly backing out and trying to close the app. But he snatched the phone away before I could finish. His fingers flew across the screen. There was an almost imperceptible tension in his eyes. What did you do on my phone? Why did he seem more nervous than I was? Did he have something to hide on there? My mind raced with random thoughts. I shook my head. Nothing. You took it back right after I voted. Edward opened his social media, saw the poll pop up still on the screen, and his expression softened. You're into him now? To buy myself time to check his texts, I had just clicked on a random person without even seeing the name. But hearing Edward's question, I nodded anyway. Yeah, he's pretty cute. Edward opened the picture and zoomed in, scrutinizing every detail. While he was busy finding flaws, I secretly grabbed my burner and sent him another anonymous text. Why didn't you text me back, babe? That's not a very nice habit to have. The notification sound chimed, but Edward didn't even flinch. He just swiped it away. Not creepy enough? Undeterred, I sent another, babe, I'm going crazy, I like you so much. I just want to kiss you. Edward's body went rigid. He turned beet red, from his neck to the tips of his ears. It's working. Overjoyed, I leaned in and asked innocently, bro, what's wrong? Edward closed his eyes, taking a long moment to compose himself before forcing out the word, nothing. Nothing, my ass. I discreetly hid behind him, ready to send another text. But before I could even unlock my phone, Edward shot to his feet. I flinched, instinctively flipping my phone face down. Bro? Edward was gripping the file in his hand so tightly it looked like he might crush it. I have something to take care of. Don't wait for me for dinner. With that, he stormed upstairs, as if he were running from the plague. I stared at his back and couldn't help but smile. He's so cute like this. My dear brother. The next time I saw Edward was the following morning. He didn't even eat breakfast, just gave me a quick glance before heading out the door. It seemed my plan was working beautifully. I happily caressed the photo of Edward on my phone. Then I sent a message to the private investigator I'd hired, telling him to tail Edward. Half an hour later, the PI sent me a video. In it, Edward was at the gym, sweat trickling down his neck and into his shirt. I zoomed in, watched it a few times, then sent another text to Edward. Babe, why aren't you wearing a shirt at the gym? Are you trying to seduce me? In reality, he was dressed perfectly normally. But if I didn't come at him from this angle, my plan wouldn't work. And besides, he really did look incredibly sexy in the video. After sending the message, I told the PI to keep an eye on Edward and to be sure to get a picture of any angry or annoyed expressions. He replied almost immediately, "Can't do that." He looked at the text for a second and then deleted it. He deleted it? I'd spent all this time learning to be a creep. I felt gross and greasy just typing those words. And he just deleted it? I was shaking with anger. The housekeeper, who was watching a drama next to me, saw my state and quickly started patting my back to calm me down. "It's okay, miss, don't be angry," she soothed. "They won't fight for more than a few episodes. They'll make up in the end." My breath hitched. Damn it. Now I was even angrier. I was so mad I didn't even eat dinner. I just curled up in bed, replaying everything in my head, trying to figure out what went wrong. When I first started texting him, Edward had a reaction. He'd woken up the next day with dark circles under his eyes, clearly sleep-deprived. But not even a full day had passed, and now he could delete my messages without batting an eye. How was my plan supposed to work now? The more I thought about it, the more frustrated I became. I threw off the covers, found the towel the PI had delivered that afternoon, the one Edward had used to wipe his sweat, and took a picture of it. I sent it to him with a line of text, "Babe, the towel you wiped your sweat on smells so good. I love it." Just as I was about to put the towel away to use for my next round of harassment, there was a knock on my door. I frantically stuffed the towel back into its box. I'd barely made it back to bed and feigned sleep when the door creaked open. The housekeeper poked her head in. "Miss?" she called softly. I pretended to be waking up, mumbling an incoherent response. The next second, Edward's voice cut in. "I'll take it from here." The door closed again, and Edward's footsteps grew closer. I had just sent the creepy text, and now he was walking into my room. Guilt-ridden, I burrowed deeper under the covers. The scent of seafood congee wafted over. Edward set the tray down and reached out to check my forehead for a fever. My burner phone was right next to my pillow. I instinctively grabbed his hand. Edward quickly pulled his hand back and shoved it in his pocket, his tone a little unnatural. "The housekeeper said you didn't even eat dinner. What are you so angry about?" I had an excuse ready for this. I huffed indignantly, "It's that stupid show. The plot is so ridiculous. How could they get back together in the end?" Edward furrowed his brow. "That's it?" I nodded. I never thought he wouldn't believe me. I've always had a short fuse. If Edward said one wrong thing to me, I could give him the silent treatment for 2 weeks. Getting so mad at a TV show that I'd skip dinner sounded absurd, but for me, it wasn't that far-fetched. Edward shot me an exasperated look. "You're skipping meals over something so trivial." I chuckled sheepishly. He handed me the bowl of congee. I took the opportunity to study his expression. Nothing seemed off. Had he not seen the text yet? Looks like I needed to turn up the heat. I stirred the congee with my spoon a few times, then shooed him away. "Okay, I'm going to eat now. You can go. Get back to your work." Edward glanced at me, then turned to leave. But just as he passed my walk-in closet, there was a sudden thud as a box fell to the floor. He stopped in his tracks and looked toward the closet. My pupils constricted, and my heart leaped into my throat. I'm screwed. I was in such a hurry before, I didn't put the towel away properly. It must have fallen off the shelf. If the towel fell out of the box, Edward would know that the pervert harassing him was me. Forget changing my destiny as a throwaway character. He'd probably scatter my ashes to the wind. The more I thought about it, the more terrified I became. The second before he turned to investigate the closet, I yelled, "Bro." Edward instinctively looked back. He saw the congee spilled all over my blankets and forgot all about the closet. He rushed back to my side. "Where did you get burned?" I let out a sigh of relief, the pain only now registering. I threw back the covers. Edward saw the red patch on my calf and immediately pulled out his phone to call his driver. My mind was consumed with the thought of the towel that could expose me at any moment. I grabbed his wrist. It's fine. The congee was almost cold anyway. I just need to run some cold water on it. Edward's gaze fell on my leg. We should still get it checked out, just to be safe. Going out now wasn't a bad idea. At least for a little while, no one would be going into my closet. With that thought, I let go of Edward. But he put his phone away. Forget it. It'll be faster if I drive you. He started walking toward the closet again. Wait here, I'll grab you a jacket. My entire body went into panic mode. If he saw that towel, I wouldn't be going to a hospital, I'd be going straight to a psych ward. Edward frowned, looking at my hand clamped tightly on his arm. What's wrong? Thinking on my feet, I blurted out, I don't need a jacket, it's not cold out. And it really hurts. Luckily, Edward was too worried to notice that I just said the congee wasn't hot. He gave up on the jacket and moved to help me up. But I threw my arms around his neck. I can't walk. The closet door was still open. I needed to completely block his line of sight so he wouldn't see the evidence on the floor as we passed. Edward didn't overthink it and just bent down to pick me up. As we headed downstairs, the housekeeper saw his hurried pace and rushed over. What happened? Edward didn't break his stride. She burned herself. I'm taking her to the hospital. You go on. I'll go upstairs and tidy up. Okay, the housekeeper replied. On the way back from the hospital, while Edward was applying burn cream to my leg, I sneakily unlocked my phone and continued sending him harassing texts. Babe, why are you at the hospital? Who's that you're holding? The notification sound went off, but Edward ignored it. Only after he'd screwed the cap back on the ointment did he pick up his phone to look. He only glanced at it for a second before hitting delete. He turned and saw me staring at him. He frowned. What are you looking at? Who was that? I asked. This was a good chance to gauge his attitude. If he was annoyed, I could keep going. But if it was something else, I'd have to reconsider my plan. Otherwise, it wouldn't have the desired effect of bothering him. Edward locked his phone. No one. His answer was too vague. I couldn't tell how he felt. I pressed him. Who is no one? I saw you delete the message. Edward seemed to be getting irritated by my questions. He turned to look at me, silent. His stare made me uncomfortable, and I started to stammer. I am not trying to pry into your private life. I just think, what if it's someone who has a crush on you? You should give them a chance. I mean, you're not getting any younger. It's time to start thinking about it. I was just spouting nonsense without thinking. I don't know which words set him off, but Edward's face darkened. He let out a cold laugh and didn't say another word. As soon as we got home, the housekeeper came to greet us. After confirming that I was okay, she suddenly remembered something. Oh, by the way, miss, should I wash that white towel in your closet? My back went rigid, and my heart started pounding. Edward, who had been silent the whole ride, finally spoke. What towel? The housekeeper was about to describe it in detail. I cut her off, my voice a little rushed. Don't wash it. It was a free gift with something I bought a few days ago. It sheds. I'm just going to throw it out. Edward gave me a long, meaningful look but didn't say anything else. He just took me back to my room, told me not to sleep on my injured leg, and left. Right before he walked out, he specifically glanced in the direction of my closet. I had a feeling Edward was getting suspicious. But I didn't dare stop. I had to just bite the bullet and keep up my creepy stalker act. The texts got more and more explicit, but Edward seemed completely unaffected. Not only was he not bothered enough to lose sleep, he seemed to be full of energy every day. It was as if he were receiving flirty messages, not harassment. I was starting to panic again. According to the plot, the main couple's relationship was about to hit a rough patch, and the heroine would soon get a job at a gym to make ends meet, where she would meet Edward, the villain. This couldn't happen. I had to make sure he was too drained to even think about going to the gym. To figure out why Edward wasn't reacting to my texts, I sent another one while sitting right next to him. "Babe, I like you so much. How can you just ignore me?" The message sent, but Edward's phone didn't even make a sound. Something was wrong. I decided to take a risk. I put in my earbuds and called his number. The robotic voice of a blocked number immediately answered. He blocked me. So, he was annoyed by this. Now that I'd found the problem, I immediately switched to a new burner SIM and sent him a message. "Babe, I like you so much. How could you block me? I'm so sad, babe. But wiping my tears with your towel makes me feel all better again. Smiley face." The notification chimed. Edward, caught off guard, picked up his phone. His expression immediately darkened. I tilted my head, unable to stop the corner of my mouth from twitching into a smile. "See? I told you this would work." I was happily preparing my next message when Edward suddenly turned his head and looked right at me. I didn't have time to wipe the smile off my face, and our eyes met. Trying to school my features now would look way too obvious. I nonchalantly averted my gaze, the smile on my lips growing wider. That night, at 3 a.m, Edward replied to one of my harassing texts for the first time. "I don't like it. Stop sending me this stuff." I was in the middle of seriously researching how to be even creepier when the message popped up unexpectedly. I froze for a second, my mind conjuring an image of Edward typing that message, lips pressed into a thin, serious line. Usually, when he looked like that, I'd feel a pang of guilt, wondering if he'd found out about my latest scheme. But this time, a secret thrill shot through me. A smile playing on my lips, I replied, "But if you don't like it, you'll remember me more deeply, babe." Edward shot back, "I won't remember you, and I would never like someone who hides in the shadows to confess their feelings." Good. It would be a disaster if he actually liked it. I wasn't fazed, just replied with a cheerful grin, "So you want to see me, babe? But I'm not ready for that just yet. It's so much fun watching you from the shadows. I'll let you see me when I get tired of this game." Edward didn't reply this time. He probably blocked me again. I didn't waste any time, quickly switching to another new SIM card. "Okay, babe, get some rest. Dream of me. Oh, and by the way, I like that you sleep naked. Pink is a good color on you." An indignant reply came back almost instantly, "I don't." I'd never actually seen him. I only said that because all the guys in the videos I'd seen wore pink. But since he denied it, it must be true. My plan was clearly working. I was so excited I couldn't sleep a wink. The second I heard movement downstairs, I rushed down to check on Edward's mental state. He was sitting at the dining table. When he heard my footsteps, he didn't even bother to look up. Looks like he didn't sleep well either. I was in a great mood. "Good morning, bro." Edward glanced at me but said nothing. The housekeeper, however, sounded surprised. "You two are usually the opposite. One of you is up at the crack of dawn, and the other is still half asleep at noon. Why the switch today?" I leaned in closer, feigning innocence. "Yeah, bro, what were you up to last night?" At the mention of last night, Edward's expression immediately became unnatural. In the blink of an eye, he was blushing from head to toe. I took a sip of congee to hide my smile. Looking up, I continued to tease him. "Why are you blushing, bro?" After a few more jabs from me, Edward couldn't even eat anymore. He made up an excuse and left in a hurry. After he was gone, I was planning to go back to bed for a nap. But then my eyes fell on the clock, and my heart sank. Today was the day Edward was supposed to meet the heroine at the gym. In the story, this was when the main couple's relationship was at its worst. To get the heroine to come back to him, the hero sabotaged her job search at every turn. Desperate, the heroine had to take a job at her friend's gym, the same one Edward frequented. The rest of the plot was pretty cliché. The heroine gets hassled, but she uses her wits and strength to get out of it. Edward is impressed and recruits her to his company. The hero gets insanely jealous, and he and Edward start a war in the business world. I become collateral damage in their fight. After I die, Edward completely loses it. He abandons all his morals and becomes a cold, ruthless revenge machine. Thinking about his tragic end. I called him just before he would have arrived at the gym. "Bro," I said, my voice full of pain, "I think I'm dying." There was a loud bang on the other end of the line. Edward's voice came through, frantic. "I'm coming home right now." As soon as he hung up, I didn't waste a second. I had my PI send me a picture of an open package from outside. Then, using my anonymous number, I texted Edward. "Oh dear, babe. Looks like your little sister ate the chocolates I sent you. TSK, TSK. I guess she'll have to suffer in your place." Worried my acting wasn't convincing enough, I actually ate some expired snacks I found. The effect was even better than I'd imagined. By the time Edward burst through the door, I was a mess of vomiting and diarrhea. I reached out a trembling hand to him. "Bro, save me." Edward didn't hesitate. He just scooped me up and rushed to the hospital. In between bouts of vomiting in the car, I didn't forget to text him. "Your sister looks like she's in so much pain, babe. What a shame. I was hoping I'd get to see you like this." Edward's eyes were fixed on the road. He didn't see the text. I figured this was probably enough. And I was feeling genuinely awful, so I didn't send any more. After we left the doctor's office, Edward finally took out his phone. He started returning calls and messages. When he got to the one I'd sent, his hand froze. Fury gathered in his eyes. Instead of typing, he called the anonymous number directly. Seeing what he was doing, I scrambled to silence my phone, terrified I'd be sent right back into the hospital before we even left the parking lot. Luckily, Edward was too consumed with rage to notice my frantic movements. After several calls went straight to the robotic number unavailable message, he gripped his phone so tightly I thought it might shatter. I didn't dare look him in the eye. When he wasn't looking, I deleted my entire message history. The second we got in the car, I pretended to be asleep, and I didn't wake up even after we got home. Edward stood on my bedroom balcony, firing off one text after another. "What the hell do you want? Is this your idea of liking someone? Drugging them? Don't let me catch you. Or I swear I'll kill you." I huddled under the covers, my forehead beaded with cold sweat. Before, I was so focused on saving Edward that I never thought to be afraid. And in my original plan, a few harassing texts weren't a big deal. Edward wouldn't go to the trouble of tracking me down. But now, things felt like they were spinning out of control. If he found out I had orchestrated the whole thing myself, my fate would be even worse than the throwaway characters. I bit my lip. Logic told me I should press my advantage and completely sever any possibility of Edward meeting the heroine. But my courage was telling me it was time to stop. I pulled the blanket down a little, peeking at Edward's back. The scales began to tip. Whatever. Saving his life was more important. Worst case, I'll just run for it. My mind made up, I snuggled back under the covers and texted him. "Okay, babe. I'll be waiting for you to catch me." The moment the message sent, Edward turned and glanced at me. I quickly squeezed my eyes shut, pretending to be asleep. I thought he would immediately start trying to track down his stalker. But I waited and waited, and all I got was another text from Edward, his tone slightly softer. "Why did you try to drug me?" How did his focus get stuck on that? Unable to read him, I continued my creepy girl act. "Because I was angry, babe. The way you look when you're all sweaty at the gym, the way you breathe, it's so sexy. I don't want anyone else to see you. Not even other guys. So what was I supposed to do? I had to make sure you couldn't go. And the thought of you suffering like that where only I could see you, it was such a turn on. Too bad your sister ruined it. I'm not happy. Maybe it was just my guilty conscience, but I felt like Edward glanced over at me again. As long as he was there, I didn't dare open my eyes. I don't know how long I lay there, but eventually, I drifted off into a real, hazy sleep. When I woke up, Edward was sitting by my bed. My phone, which I remembered had fallen on the floor, was now placed neatly on the nightstand. A chill went down my spine, and I shot up in bed. When I fell asleep, I think I left my phone unlocked. And because Edward had been in the room the whole time, I hadn't had a chance to delete the texts or close the app. Did he? I tested the waters. Bro, have you been here this whole time? Edward nodded. My heart pounded faster. Edward stared at me and then suddenly asked, "Why did you open my package?" He knew. He suspected me. Edward and I never touched each other's things without asking, let alone ripped open a package and ate the contents. Especially contents that turned out to be problematic. I tried to act calm. A friend sent me chocolates, too. I didn't look closely and thought it was mine. Edward gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Is that so? Seeing that look, I knew he didn't believe me. But until he had proof, I couldn't admit anything. I deliberately turned the question back on him. So why did you suddenly get chocolates? Someone sent them to me, Edward replied casually. Then he asked, do you think she really likes me, or is she just faking it? I got even more flustered, not daring to meet his eyes. I guess she really likes you. If I said she was faking it, I'd give myself away. I wasn't supposed to know who she was. Edward continued, but she only dares to send me gifts from the shadows. It was harassment. I don't know how he'd managed to romanticize it in his head. I spewed more nonsense. Maybe she's just worried you'll reject her. Edward smiled, a slow, knowing smile. Oh, so that's it. After that day, I was constantly worried Edward would expose me. But to avoid tipping him off, I kept up my routine, sending him harassing texts at the same time every day. Babe, I want to kiss you so bad. Babe, you're so adorable when you're racking your brain trying to find me. It just makes me want to kiss you more. Edward stopped blocking me, but he didn't reply either. This went on for half a month. One morning, I woke up to a news alert on my phone. It said the heroine had been found by her wealthy family and would soon be having a wedding of the century with the hero. There was even a wedding photo attached. After a moment of shock, I immediately bought a plane ticket out of the country. The hero and heroine were getting married, and Edward had never even met them. That meant the rest of the horrible plot wouldn't happen. I had saved Edward's life. Now it was time to save my own. His recent behavior made me sure he knew I was his creepy stalker. This was not a good place to be. As I packed my bags, I didn't forget to harass Edward one last time. I'd already sent every text I could think of, so I resorted to digging the clothes he'd told the housekeeper to throw out from the trash, taking a picture, and sending it to him. Babe, your clothes smell so good. After sending the text, I grabbed my luggage and ran. Edward happened to be on a business trip for a few days. I had to get out before he came back. That way, even if he knew it was me, there was nothing he could do. The world is a big place. How would he ever find me? Besides, I'd bought tickets to several different countries. He wouldn't find me anytime soon. The plan was so perfect that I was in a great mood. I sent him another text, babe, I like you so much. Edward didn't reply again. I didn't care. I just composed an apology text and scheduled it to be sent later. It basically said I was sorry for harassing him for so long, that I now realized my behavior was wrong, and that I would try to be better. I wouldn't bother him anymore. As for my departure, I had an excuse for that too. I'd say I fell for a hot foreign guy and was running off to another country to chase after him. But I never, ever expected that a quick trip to the airport bathroom would be the last thing I remembered. When I woke up again, I was in my bedroom. My heart sank. I tried to sit up, only to find my wrists were tied. Edward was sitting by the bed, his expression unreadable. I whispered his name cautiously. Bro? Edward looked up, his eyes so dark they were like bottomless pits. In love with someone else? Running off to the ends of the earth with him? My mouth fell open. It wasn't time for my scheduled text to send yet. How did he know? When I didn't say anything, a smirk played on his lips. Babe, I like you so much. Weren't those your words? I tried to force a smile, but my face wouldn't cooperate. Edward leaned in, his face so close our noses were almost touching. If you like your big brother so much, why were you leaving? He was genuinely terrifying like this. I immediately surrendered. I was wrong. Edward raised an eyebrow. Wrong about what? I rattled off a list of my sins. I shouldn't have sent you anonymous texts, I shouldn't have eaten the bad chocolates, I shouldn't have. Before I could finish, Edward cut me off. His gaze dropped to my wrists. But I don't think any of that was wrong. You did a great job, Star. I was too stunned to react. When I was texting him, this wasn't how he acted. He acted like he wanted to hunt me down and cut me into 1,000 pieces. And now? I swallowed hard. Then what? If none of that was wrong, what was there left to confess to? If I'd punched a hole in the ozone layer, he probably would have complimented my strength. Edward crossed his legs, leaning back in the chair with a relaxed posture. Think again. The pressure from him was immense. My body was rigid, my brain working at lightning speed. After a long moment, I blurted out the most absurd reason I could think of. Because I was going to chase after a hot foreign guy. The words sounded ridiculous even to me. But Edward just nodded. You confessed your feelings to me, but then you were going to chase after someone else. That made me very angry. My world was collapsing. Finally finding my voice, I tried to explain. Bro, those texts weren't a confession, they were harassment. And there was a reason for it. I couldn't tell him the reason. And I didn't get the chance to. Because Edward's eyes were growing darker and darker, so dark I couldn't bear to look at them. He corrected me. It was a confession. You said you liked me. You liked me without a shirt on. And you liked pink. I was speechless. When did you know it was me? From the very first text, Edward said. I was floored. That early? Then why didn't you say anything? I asked. Not only did he not expose me, he blocked me and didn't reply. If he had just called me out back then, I would have come up with a different plan. We wouldn't be here now. Edward looked confused. Why would I expose you? I tried a different question. You blocked me at first. Blocking me meant he didn't like it. So what was this, tying me up here? Edward looked completely guiltless. At first, I thought you were just messing with me, playing a prank. But then I realized you weren't. So there was no reason for me to hide anymore. It was too much information. My brain couldn't process it. Hide what? That he liked me? So that's why he looked so exhausted back then. It wasn't because of my harassment, but because he was struggling with whether to confess his feelings. Oh my God. My plan had been a total failure from the very beginning. I clutched my head, feeling like it was about to explode. Edward stared at me without blinking. So, you really were just messing with me for fun? You don't actually like me? After a few seconds of internal debate, I gritted my teeth and admitted it. No, I really do like you. My destiny was already changed. What did I have to be afraid of now? If I didn't like him, why would I have pretended to be a psycho to keep him from meeting the heroine? And to be honest, part of the reason I sent those texts was that I wanted to see him get all flustered. I'd just always been afraid he'd think I was crazy, so I never dared to say it. Well, it was all out in the open now. He'd said it himself. Edward pressed me. Like what? The sweat? The pink? I cut him off. You. A smile spread across Edward's face. After a long moment, he said softly, "Babe, I really like you, too." A tingly, warm feeling spread from my heart through my whole body. I suppressed the flutter of excitement and urged him, "Then get over here." Edward looked puzzled. "What for?" I hooked his leg with my foot. "You said it wasn't pink, but now you're admitting it is. Seeing is believing. I need to see for myself." Edward's IQ seemed to have completely dropped today. Hearing my words, he didn't hesitate to pull off his shirt. I fought to keep my lips from curving into a triumphant smirk. "A little closer." Edward did as I said. I pressed my cheek against his chest and sighed contentedly. The next second, Edward's kisses fell on me like a storm. That night, every single text I'd ever sent him was brought to life. And Edward, in a playful act of revenge, made me recite every single message I'd ever sent him. For every word I got wrong, the night got a little bit longer.